Happy Friday, Giants fans. Welcome back to Giants Latest. Hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on all things New York Giants. So yesterday, the media was at practice, and we have a lot to discuss because of that. On top of that, the coordinators spoke with the media, and we also got to hear from some players. So we're going to get a little bit into the coordinators today, and then more into the rest of the coordinators, Brandon Brown, and the players next week, because I can't fit it all in one video. So let's talk about the fight, because this is something we have to discuss. And look, at the end of the day, it's not a big deal. Fights happen, but it's a kind of entertaining, and I want to talk about it because the tweets that I've seen from the media are honestly cracking me up about it. Like, it is truly comical. And the reason why it's funny is because no one got injured, okay? If Brian Burns or Kayvon got injured because of this, I would be furious, and this would be a very different conversation. But everything's fine, and Brian Burns spoke to the media afterwards and was like, look, it's not that big of a deal. Fights happen. They don't typically happen in OTAs because the guys aren't tackling each other. There's no hitting, and they don't even really have their pads on. It's more likely that it happens during training camp, but every once in a while it happens. And he said, there's no beef between the team. Everyone is fine. It was really hot. If you live in the Northeast, it was no joke, 90 degrees, humid, like to the point where it was foggy, like disgusting type of heat. So I get it. I was at the Yankee game sweating through my clothes, and I'm like, I don't really blame him, for just kind of wanting to fight each other. So he said, there's no bad blood. It's fine. It is what it is. But the reason we even know about it is because the media was there. So that's why I also want to talk about it because, sometimes these things happen during practice. The Giants are never going to tell us that. They're never going to report on this. I mean, I think I talked about this earlier in the week that when I was reading Giants.com, they don't even tell you the quarterback it was that threw the interception. So I know that Dane Belton is having a stellar OTA so far because he's got, 3 different interceptions? Don't know who the quarterback was that threw it. So I love getting the media's perspective on things because everyone's basically saying the same thing, is that there was a fight. So based on everything that I've read, this is what happened. During one of the plays, so they were doing either 7-on-7s or 11-on-11s, and it must have been 11-on-11s. So Burns and James Hudson go at it after the play. So both of them get yanked off and put on the sidelines, and they rotate the players. So now, after the next play, Kayvon and Jermaine Illuminor start going at it. So while those two are going at it, James Hudson from the sideline runs in and gets involved to stick up for Illuminor, his offensive tackle buddy. He's like, you're not going to come after him. So then Burns, who's also on the sideline, is like, oh, hell no. I got to back up my boy Kayvon. So according to Connor Hughes, and I'm just picturing this in my head, and I wish I was there to witness it because, like I said, it's hysterical. Burns goes running from the sideline and tackles James Hudson, an offensive tackle, an extremely large man, knocked him to the ground. So all 4 of them are now in a heap on the ground and had to be pulled apart from each other. And I just think that it is so funny. And also, I love the fire in the players. And look, I don't want them to take it out and fight each other, but I think it just kind of proves that there's a different type of energy this year. And we've seen that, right? You see it from the way that the players speak to the media. And we're going to talk about Wandale next week, but the way that he was like literally gushing about Russ Wilson and, how different it is to have him here as a quarterback and how he already feels the difference in the catchable balls that are coming his way. Like, I'm not trying to overvalue the things that these players say because ultimately they have to say it on the field. But the things that some of them have said, we have not heard in the 6 years that Daniel Jones has been the starting quarterback. So I just want to bring that to people's attention because I do think ultimately it's important when you hear how happy the wide receivers are that they feel like already in OTAs, they can make really great plays from the quarterback. So I do think that says a lot. But anyway, back to the fight. So I love that these guys are sticking up for each other too. I think also that's really important. You're starting to sense this camaraderie that, guys have each other's backs. And I also saw a photo that Russell Wilson posted that the quarterbacks, offensive linemen, and running backs all went out to dinner together. And there's a great photo of all of them smiling together outside in front of the restaurant. And I just think it's really important that we're starting to see this early on. On top of that, Russell Wilson also invited Jalen Hyatt out to meet him to do a private workout, which they did together this offseason. So these are the things that show a lot about the leadership and how important it is to have players in the building that do things like this, that cultivate the camaraderie. And we heard this about Justin Pugh, right? Is that as soon as he got in the building, he was taking all the offensive linemen under his wing and said, this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to do it. And I think that, Andrew Thomas is a leader in his own silent way, but we need people in the building who are going to do that. So I love all of it. I think it's great. Burns said that he was asked about, like what kind of started it, or what do you think? Is this a problem? You think that guys are fighting? And he was like, look, sometimes the heat and whatever, it just gets the best of us. We all love each other. We're a team. It's not a big deal at the end of the day. And he's like, we play a violent sport. We hit each other for a living. Like, this is what it is. And, he said, I don't really have a problem with it. I do think that it shows, that players have a fight and a will in them, and they're willing to have each other's backs, which is so important. But on top of that, he also said that he does think it becomes a problem when practice has it to end early, which is what they had to do yesterday. So he said, I don't like that, and I don't want to see it get to that point. And I don't want it to get like that in the future. So anyway, I like to hear that these guys are sticking up for each other. I like to hear that, everyone has each other's backs. And, every once in a while, like he said, it's a violent sport. This is what they do. I just think it's kind of also ironic that the media happened to be there and actually witness this whole thing. And I know some people have asked for footage. So what happens at OTAs when the media is allowed there are specific periods that they are allowed to film, and then they have to put their phones away. And they are very strict with this. And these are media people who can get in trouble and lose their media access if they do things they're not supposed to, like film things that shouldn't be filmed. So no one got the fight on video, all of that to say. So I know people were asking about it. It's all just secondhand reports, but I trust all the tweets that I saw from these people who obviously are in the Giants building and pretty reliable. So with that being said, I want to move along to talking about Dart and some of the quarterback reps. This is also something that we don't see from Giants.com, which is why I love when the media is there, because we actually got numbers and who was with who. So let's start with the quarterbacks. This is a tweet from Connor Hughes, who actually covers the Giants and the Jets, but he's been a lot on the Giants lately. So I thought this tweet was interesting. So this was just for 11-on-11 drills. He didn't take in the 7-on-7s, which the 11-on-11s are more important anyway. Russell Wilson went 10 of 14 for a touchdown, an interception, and 2 sacks. Jackson Dart went 5 of 9 for 2 interceptions and a sack, and Jameis Winston went 4 of 8 and had 2 runs. So a snap breakdown as to where of all of these guys played. So Wilson, every single one of his reps was in with the first teams. There's not a surprise there at all. Dart got 1 first team rep, 8 second team reps, and 1 third team rep. Before anyone goes hailing Jackson Dart as he's going to beat out Jameis Winston for the backup, this is what Brian Daboll does in OTAs. We saw it last week when the media was there that Jackson Dart was getting in with the ones. They did it with Tommy DeVito. We've seen Daboll do this continuously throughout OTAs and training camp. Every once in a while, he will throw in the quarterbacks in different scenarios to see how they do and how they handle it. So let's not jump to the guns that Jackson Dart is the guy right now. He also had a pretty brutal day yesterday, but it's practice. This is what it's for. And lastly, Jameis Winston had 1 first team rep, 5 second team reps, and 6 with the third team. The 1 rep with the first team was the touchdown that I saw to Darius Slayton, which was a beautiful deep throw. And this is where Darius is so good. So those were a little bit of the highlights from the numbers. Again, things that we don't just get from Giants.com, which is why I really appreciate the media. Something else I want to talk about is the offensive line configurations. And this is a tweet from Art Stapleton, who I was laughing to myself when I saw this because he tagged me in it because I have been so aggressively anti Joshua Ezeudu at left tackle that Art Stapleton, who posted about it last week, told me to calm down. And I love Art. Like, we're joking. And I was like, Art, I'm not going to calm down. So anyway, Joshua Ezeudu is not in with the left tackles, in case anyone was curious. So the starting offensive line, Andrew Thomas, John Runyon, and Greg Van Roten were not in the team periods. Now, we know that Runyon and Thomas are obviously coming back from injuries. I think they're just focused on a lot of rotations, like we said. So, from left to right, the ones were James Hudson, Evan Neal, John Michael Schmitz, Jake Kubas, and Jermaine Illuminor. Obviously, James Hudson is not going to be the starting left tackle, and Evan Neal is not going to be the starting left guard. But I love that they do these rotations, right? We all want Evan Neal to be a good football player. That benefits the Giants as a whole. And obviously means that he's improved and maybe we have a good offensive line at some point. So I like to see that. Also, Jake Kubas, we saw a bit of last year as a guard. He's done a nice job. Like to see him rotating in the ones and see how that went, obviously, with GVR. Out. So the twos from left to right: Stone Forsythe, Joshua Izudu, Austin Schlottman, Aaron Stinney, Marcus Bowe. Marcus Bowe played guard in college, but Dable said that they are moving him to tackle. And so far, he's gotten the most of his reps as at right tackle. So what I expect is if, God forbid, Andrew Thomas goes down, they will move Illuminor to left tackle like they did last year, and they will have Bowe start at right tackle. I think that's what they'll end up doing. So I'm glad he's getting a lot of reps there. We'll see how it goes. The third string line from left to right was Stone Forsythe again, Brian Hudson at left guard, Jimmy Morrissey center, right guard Jason Williams, and right tackle Marcus Bowe. So Marcus Bowe is getting a lot of reps at right tackle. Again, I think that's going to be their plan if, God forbid, something happens to Thomas, and I'm on board with it. Last year they didn't draft an offensive lineman. This year they did. Let's see what he can do. Hopefully he's better than Evan Neal. So lastly, I want to talk about the coordinators. So I took notes on them and they kind of talked a lot. So I'm going to do my best to narrow it down here. So we're going to talk about special teams coach Mike Gobriel and defensive coordinator Shane Bowen. Starting with Gobriel. So he was asked about Gano. He said he looks good and he's healthy. He said he was asked about competition. Is Graham Gano going to be the guy, or are you going to open it up to competition with Jude McAdamney this summer? And he said everyone on the roster is in a competition. They are fighting for their roster spot, and Jude has done a nice job so far. Do I think Jude is going to beat out Graham Gano? No, but I'd like to hear that there's some healthy competition there. He was asked about Amir Smith-Marset and why they ended up bringing him back. He said he's got good production, good ball protection, and good decision-making. He's very competitive and a good leader. He says he loves watching him in meetings because he's really involved as a leader, speaks a lot, and does a really nice job. He mentioned when looking through last season's tape that he was proud of the production, competitive play, and consistency that special teams did even through the end of this season. And I thought that was really interesting that he highlighted that because, I think we felt as fans that there were a couple times where we were questioning the players, like, did they give up on this play, Tay Banks? Or, different scenarios like that. So to hear a coach say that he was proud of his players sticking it out even when, the team went 3-14, I thought that was interesting. Lastly, he talked about Chris Board, a veteran that the Giants brought in. He's a linebacker, but he's really a special teams person, and he is a really great tackler. So, he talked about how in the past 5 years, he's been one of the best at special teams tacklers in the NFL, and that was something that they really liked about him when they brought him in. He came from a playoff-bound team and obviously has a lot of experience, but not only experience, he has a lot of production. So Chris Board has done a nice job so far. I've seen his name throughout the Giants.com reports that he's made, would have made some nice tackles or got his hand on a ball, pass breakups, things like that. Lastly, Shane Bowen. We have to talk about this. So, he was asked if he feels like the luckiest guy in the world after the Giants spent over $100 million on free agents to help the secondary, along with drafting Abdul Carter number 3 overall. He said, of course, he's happy with the way that things went. He said that you want to put your players in the best position to succeed based on their skill set, but that also based on the scheme, they won't always be in the same position every play. So he talked a lot about the versatility too, about the guys on the team, specifically Abdul Carter and Brian Burns. That's what he loves about the two of them. And he said, basically, like, how lucky am I have 3 really great players in 2 spots, and we're always going to put the best 11 players out there on the field. So everything that I'm gathering from Shane Bowen, what I think we're going to see from him this year is more exotic looks and changes to the scheme. That's what I hope to see. And I just think that now that he probably feels like he's got more talent in there, he's capable of doing that. He also said, obviously, they have a lot to improve upon. They barely got any takeaways last year, that they have to be able to stop the run. They have to be able to stop guys on third down. He said they can't allow themselves to get into positions where 3rd and 1 is happening regularly. And the same thing, when they're on 3rd and 11, they have to make a stop. So these are all things that he mentioned that they really have to improve upon. Now, when it came to the takeaways, okay, this is a little corny, but I will say, do what you got to do, Shane Bowen, whatever whatever is going to make it work. So there is a treasure chest, a literal treasure chest that is outside at practice. And of course the media saw it and were like, what the hell is this? So Bowen said that his son is on his first T-ball team. He's at the point where this is what he's playing, and his team name is the Pirates. So he got this idea from his son, who's a pirate, that what do pirates do? They look for gold and they steal things, right? Old-time pirates, and they're violent. So he took this and said he's going to implement it into practices in the sense that he wants the players to steal possessions, to take the ball away, and to be violent about it, right? To make plays. And I will say that while I think this is corny, but you do whatever you got to do, we have heard that there have already been a lot of takeaways this year at OTAs. Dane Belton has 3, Micah McFadden has 1, Paulson Adebo has 1, Javon Hollins, like all of these guys in the secondary specifically have been really involved in making plays and getting takeaways. So I'm not going to say that I think that all of a sudden it's going to work and we're going to have 15 turnovers this year, but maybe it's going to help a little bit. So he was asked about Banks, and he said that he's very engaged this year. He's asking a lot of questions, and he feels like he's made good progress, and he wants him to continue on that. He also said, that Banks is young, and he feels like specifically with young players like him, you really see a drastic difference in improvement for them year over year. So, he's expecting for Banks to continue to make more progress this year, second year in the scheme. I hope that that's the case. And then lastly, of course, he was asked, number one, about Abdul Carter, what he loves about him. He obviously talked about the versatility already. He said that Abdul Carter is all ball. He loves that as soon as you start talking about football, he lights up. He's involved in every conversation. He's over on special teams, watching what they're doing. He's engaged in everything. And I love this. This is what we want. I just want a player, and this is what kind of pisses me off about Kayvon, and I won't get into a rant about that, but Abdul Carter is all ball. He's not talking about, doing partnerships and, being in New York because he can have a brand and and a podcast and all this shit. It's just football for him, and I love that about him. And then lastly, he was also asked if he feels like he has any pressure on him because of what John Mara said at the end of the season about the defense, basically that they sucked and need to be a hell of a lot better this year. So he said, he doesn't feel the pressure from that sense, but he feels like he has a duty for these players to help them improve and to help, get the best out of them and put them in a position to succeed and to help them progress and be better football players. So that's his focus. I'm sure that getting fired is also in the back of his mind, but he's doing what he can to get these players to take it to the next level, to make good plays this year, and ultimately time will tell and we'll see how it does. But stay tuned to hear about the rest of the coordinators and players next week.